Hare Krishna. We're studying from Bhagavad Gita as it is, Chapter 7, Text 1. Chapter 7 is entitled Knowledge of the Absolute. And today's April 24th, 2021. And I just noticed on one online source for Prabhupada's lectures, he has more than 40 lectures on this verse, chapter 7, text 1. Okay, so this is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Uvacha.
Mai. Asaktamana.
Shaktamana.
Partha. Yogam. Yunjan. Madashraya. Asamshayam. Samagram. Mam. Yatha. Yasyasi. Tat. Shrinu. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Maya Sakta Manapartha. Yogam Yunjan Madashraya. Asamshayam Samagramam. Yatagyasya Shrinu. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Maya Sakta Manapartha. Yogam Yunjan Madashraya. Asamshayam Samagramam. Yatagyasya Shrinu. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Maya Sakta Manapartha. Yogam Yunjan Madashraya. Asamshayam Samagramam. Yatagyasya Shrinu. This is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 1. Would someone else like to recite the verse?
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Maya Shakta Manapartha.
Maya Sakta Manapartha.
Yogam Yunjan Manashrayaha.
Yogam Yunjan Madashraya.
Asamshayam Samagramam.
Asamshayam Samagramam.
Yatagyasya Sitatrinu.
Yatagyasya Sitatrinu.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Maya Sakta Manapartha.
Maya Sakta Manapartha.
Yogam Yunjan Mad Ashraya.
Yogam Yunjan Madashraya.
Asamshayam Samagramam.
Asamshayam Samagramam.
Yatagyasya Tatrinu.
Yatagyasya Tatrinu.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Maya Sakta Manapartha.
Maya Sakta Manapartha.
Yogam Yujnan Mashashraya.
Yogam Yunjan Madashraya.
Ashamshayam samagramam
Samshayam samagramam
yatagyayasi tachrinu.
yatagyasya tachrinu.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Ashakta Mana Partha
Maya Sakta Manaparta
Yogam Yogam Madasrayaha
Yogam Yunjan Madashraya
Ashamshayam Samagramam
Samshayam Samagramam
Yatha Gnasyasi Takshirinu.
Yatagyasya tachrinu.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Mai Asaktamat Partha
Maya Sakta Manaparta
Yogam Yunjan Mat Asraya
Yogam Yunjan Madashraya
Tasam Sayam Samagramam
Samshayam Samagramam
Yathagyan Sitat Shanu
Yatagyasya Tachrinu. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Mai unto me Asaktamana
Shaktamana,
mind attached
mind attached.
Partha
Partha,
O son of Prita
Usanapita,
Yogam
Yogam,
self-realization
self-realization.
Yunjan
Yunjan,
so practicing
so practicing.
Mat Ashraya
Madashraya,
in consciousness of me, Krishna consciousness,
in consciousness of me, Krishna consciousness.
Asamshayam,
Ashamshayam,
without doubt,
without doubt.
Samagram,
Samagram,
completely,
completely.
Mam,
Mam,
unto me,
and to me.
Yata,
Yata,
as much as, Yasyasi,
Yasyasi,
you can know,
you can know
Tat,
that,
that, Shrinu,
Shrenu,
try to hear.
try to hear.
Translation. Now hear, O son of Prita Arjuna, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. This is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 1. In this 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the nature of Krishna consciousness is fully described. Krishna is full in all opulences, and how he manifests such opulences is described here. Also, 4 kinds of fortunate people who become attached to Krishna, and 4 kinds of unfortunate people who never take to Krishna are described in this chapter. In the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the living entity has been described as non-material spirit soul, which is capable of elevating himself to self-realization by different types of yogas. At the end of the 6th chapter, it has been clearly stated that the steady concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, is the highest form of all yoga. By concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth completely, but not otherwise. Impersonal Brahmagyoti, or localized Paramatma realization, is not perfect knowledge of the absolute truth because it is partial. Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna, and everything is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness. In complete Krishna consciousness, one knows that Krishna is ultimate knowledge beyond any doubts. Different types of yoga are only stepping stones on the path of Krishna consciousness. One who takes directly to Krishna consciousness automatically knows about Brahmagyoti and Paramatma in full. By practice of Krishna consciousness yoga, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living entities, the material nature, and their manifestations with paraphernalia. One should therefore begin yoga practice as directed in the last verse of the 6th chapter. Concentration of the mind upon Krishna, the Supreme, is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam is the first and most important. The Lord therefore says to Arjuna, Tat Shrinu, or hear from me. No one can be a greater authority than Krishna, and therefore by hearing from him, one receives the greatest opportunity for progress in Krishna consciousness. One has therefore to learn from Krishna directly or from a pure devotee of Krishna, and not from a non-devotee upstart puffed up with academic education. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this process of understanding Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, is described in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto as follows. And then Prabhupada quotes the Sanskrit and English translation from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, text 17 to 21. Shrinvatam svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana ridyanta stoya bhadrini vidunoti sarit satam nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki tadaradastamo bhava kamalabadayaste chita eter anavidam stita satve prasidati evam prasana manaso Bhagavat Bhakti Yogata Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate Vidyate Vidya Grantis Chijante Sarva Samshaya Kshyante Tasya Karmani Trishta Evat Manishvare. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samshayam, samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth, personality of Godhead. That's the end of the quote from the Bhagavatam verses. And then Prabhupada continues the purport to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 1. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Om Gyanatamirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svaya Rupa Kitamayam Dadati Svapadantikam. Vandeham Shigara Shriyutapadakamalam Shugaran Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Dishakan Vitam Scha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine, Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 7, text 1. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Sakta Manapartha Yogam Yunjanmanashraya Asamshayam Samagramam Yatigyasya Tat Shrinu. Now hear, O son of Prita Arjuna, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Hare Krishna. So as Prabhupada in this purport, he's kind of giving the bridge, the segue from chapter 6 to chapter 7, and he's giving a brief summary of chapter 7. And then he talks in detail about the various aspects of this first verse. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, I looked on one online site where there's recordings of Prabhupada's lectures and transcripts, and I found more than 40 lectures on this one verse. I don't think there's any other verse anywhere in any book where Prabhupada lectures that much on one verse. So this is clearly, Prabhupada regards this as a key verse in Bhagavad Gita. And so chapter 6 ends. Well, chapter 6 is so much about yoga, different types of Astanga yoga, Hatha yoga, meditative yoga. And Krishna concludes chapter 6, Yoginam api sarvesham madgitena antaratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yomam samayuktatamo mataha. Krishna says, okay, so the goal of all of these physical exercises and yama and niyama and astanga, the goal is to do bhakti yoga. That's the conclusion. And that's a theme throughout Bhagavad Gita. Very important point, because if we don't get that thread that ties everything together, then Bhagavad Gita can seem like, a somewhat interesting mishmash, hodgepodge. Oh, that's an interesting, and here it says karma, and here's universal form. Oh, now it's talking about the varnashram system. Here it talks about intellect and jnana. These are all interesting ideas, and they're just sort of haphazardly here and there. Well, they're not haphazardly here and there. And fortunately, we have Srila Prabhupada. Actually, I remember in the summer of 1983, when I was backpacking around Europe, towards the end of that summer, I stayed for several weeks at it's called Villa Vrindavan outside of Florence, Italy. And while I was there, I read Bhagavad Gita as it is, cover to cover. But before that, in my travels around Europe on a Ural pass, staying at youth hostels, I actually read one other version of Gita. And that's what it seemed to me like, oh, well, one thing, the author, who was kind of it was a well-known yogi from India who came to the West. I guess my energetic impression was his goal, because I was reading and I wasn't understanding, and my sense was his goal is that if I don't understand, it means he's really intelligent, because I can't even understand what he's saying. So we don't get that with Prabhupada. Prabhupada, yes, we're not this body, we're spirit, soul, we're servants of Krishna, serve Krishna. Serve Krishna, serve Krishna. We're spirit souls like that. So very clear. So, but that was my impression of other attempts at other Gitas. Oh, different ideas, kind of interesting, without that thread of devotional service to Krishna Bhakti Yoga. So many paths are described in Bhagavad Gita, and they all culminate in Bhakti. That's very clear. So Krishna at the end of chapter 6, do yoga, devote. I'll read the English text 47, chapter 6, the last verse of chapter 6. And of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshiping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. And then Krishna at the beginning of chapter 7 says, okay, now hear, Arjuna, now hear how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me with mind attached to me, you can know me in full. Here's how to do it. So chapter 7, Krishna says, okay, we got the goal here, Bhakti Yoga, devotional service to Krishna. Here's how to do it. Do this, you can know me in full. Now, interesting. So in the verse, the translation, Prabhupada has, you can know me in full, free from doubt. I noticed when we were going through the word for word, because sometimes or often, Prabhupada, like he's giving one perspective or one aspect in the translation, and then sometimes he's giving a different, complementary, but different perspective in the purport. And then sometimes we'll get a third perspective in the word for word. So Prabhupada, the word for word, it's not just like, oh, here's what it says in the dictionary. This is Prabhupada speaking to us. So this word, gyasya, the last line, yata gyasyasi tat shrinu. So yata, as much as, gyasyasi, you can know. Tat, that, shrinu, try to hear. So yata gyasyasi, as much as you can know. And then in the translation, you can know me in full. So just to integrate it all together, so like by practicing Krishna consciousness, we can know God, we can know Krishna as much as its soul can know. And at the same time, Krishna is unlimited. Just like, let's say analogously, say, we encourage a bird to fly in the sky, and soar and completely visit the vastness of the sky fully. At the same time, we know that a bird is not going to approach the actual vastness of the sky. Okay, so similarly, with our devotion and our dedication to the process of Bhakti Yoga, we're encouraged, soar to full heights, to your full capacity and beyond your full capacity. And we're encouraged in that, whether we're talking about transformation, personal growth, the full awakening of the soul in love of God. And at the same time, we know as much as we soar, that we're, in a sense, we're never really going to exhaust even a drop of the limit of Krishna's magnificence and glories and depth. Because even Krishna's glories are infinite. Krishna's knowledge of Krishna is infinite, and he's ever expanding. Yes. And so, okay. And then, and so Krishna, and Prabhupada uses this term, Krishna is giving us a process, right? From one of Prabhupada's books, it's Science of Self-Realization. And so this is a very well-known set of 5 verses from the 2nd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. I know at least many of you here in our Sangha here are very familiar with these 5 verses. And these 5 verses define the process. So why does Prabhupada give these five verses in the purport to the first verse of the 7th chapter? Because these 5 verses are all about hearing. And that's what Krishna is telling to Arjuna. Just like Sutta Goswami is expressing to the sages at Namesharanya, Shinvatam Sakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Vidanta Staya Bhadrani Vidunoti Saritsatam. Shinvatam, here, Shrinu. And so Krishna says to Arjuna here, Tat Shrinu, right? The last word of the first verse of subject. Tat shrinu, try to hear, try to hear. And so, okay, so try to hear. Now, so soberly, we get to reflect on this. So try to hear this, hear that. So, yeah, this is not just some dry, abstract philosophizing. So through this process, which is a complete process, through this process, through this process, which starts with hearing. So the first message is, let's be conscious about what we hear. Because what we hear is going to powerfully influence our consciousness for better or worse. And our consciousness, that is our experience of life, whether we're miserable or envious or joyful or peaceful or confident or secure or in a happy mood or in a fearful mood or depressed or suicidal. It starts with what we hear, what sound vibration we intimately associate with. So first verse of second chapter in that series of verses in Bhagavatam, it starts with hearing. And and through this hearing process and hearing, we hear, we chant. It's like if I hear about who won the playoffs, then I'll chant about who won the playoffs. If I hear about, did you hear what's happening with Bitcoin in the stock market? Then I'll chant about it. If I hear about what's happening in local or international politics, I'll chant about it. Even if I restrain myself from chanting, at least in my own mind, right? Like I chanted japa this morning, and I had a lot of chanting in my mind that had nothing to do with Hare Krishna Maha Mantra japa. It had a lot to do with different things I exposed myself to yesterday. So the mind's like a sponge. So it's kind of, there was a part of me like, oh, no, you shouldn't go there. You should think about Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. But no, I like a sponge. I was exposed, not just from yesterday, from the day before and the week before. Stuff came into my mind from when I was 16 years old, right? So the opportunity there is like, hey, for now and for long term, like let's really be conscious of what sound vibration and what visual impressions and what sound impressions we expose ourselves to, because that's going to powerfully influence and affect our consciousness, and that's our quality of life. So through this hearing, we awaken to the actual happiness, the actual bliss of the soul. So that's why, like, Krishna is caring about us. He's speaking to Arjuna, he's speaking to us, right? This is actual spiritual happiness, the Atma Rama, the nature of the self, the soul awakening to itself. In coach training, I gave an example yesterday. So it's in my mind. It's a good one, comes from Srila Prabhupada. And I remember some in the coach training, they weren't used to some of Srila Prabhupada's analogies, and it's a rather gruesome, and I said, this is kind of a gruesome analogy. But Prabhupada gives the example that in former times, maybe still today in some places, but when like a criminal is being punished, they would tie him to a chair and dunk him under water, but then before death. So it's terrible suffering. But then before death, they would lift him up, and then a few breaths, and then back down again. Okay. So this is a punishment. So the metaphor is that. So we think, okay, I'm lifted up. I get a few breaths. I get a few breaths, and this is happiness. This is happiness, and then back under. So it's not happiness. This is a vital distinction. It's not happiness. It's called relief from misery. Okay. So that's material happiness. It's not the actual internal bliss of the soul that is naturally revealed and experienced with the soul in connection with self-realization, in connection with body, like this spiritual bliss. It's self-revealed through Bhagavad Gita. It's self-revealed by Srimad Bhagavatam. It's self-revealed when we're chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's the positive happiness of the soul. It's not a happiness. It's not a happiness that's dependent on, he has a nicer house than me, but she's suffering worse than me, so I guess I'm pretty happy. It's not based on envy. It's not based on jealousy. It's not based on comparison. Of course, there can be healthy comparison. Mostly kind of like, I can compare myself to yesterday or last year. I can look at in ways that are important. Am I a better person than I was yesterday? In terms of kindness and humility and sincerity of devotional heart. Okay, yeah, let me aspire to be better than I was yesterday in ways that are important, in self-discipline and self-control, in enthusiasm for devotional service. And if I find that I'm actually slipping this month or compared to last year, okay, not to become harsh on ourselves, let me look at that. How come I lapsed? How come, what, did I become overconfident? Did I succumb to overeating or oversleeping, or I indulged in depression? Okay, let me look at that and learn. So there can be healthy comparison. So this is what these ancient wisdom traditions, the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, it's about yehi samsparsha jamboga dukkayunayad evate jantavanta kontena teshu amate Buddha. To use our life, use each moment while attending responsibly to the various services and to the externals, that it's all meant to enhance that bliss within. One of the verses, Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogata bhagavat tattva jigyasa mukta sangasya jayate. So in the Bhagavatam, there's a slightly different translation, same import, of course, that when we're situated in goodness, and that's why this transcendental process of bhakti yoga, it's not dependent on the modes of nature, not dependent on tamas, rajas, or sattva. It's a transcendental process, and that's something that makes it unique. These other processes, jnana yoga, hatha yoga, those processes are founded in matter. They're founded in my capacity to do austerities, my amazing intelligence. It's founded in matter, my work. And they're bona fide processes because we use the temporary to serve the eternal. We use the relative to serve the absolute. But bhakti itself is transcendental, and we can connect with that transcendence from wherever we are at, and still, to the extent that we develop sattva gun, then that's conducive to embrace bhakti. That's conducive to the extent that we're sattvic in our habits. And also, so bhakti includes all other processes, and bhakti is the only process that's intrinsically transcendental to the modes of material nature. So it says that one who is situated in sattva, situated in goodness, attains positive scientific realization of the absolute truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. in the stage of complete absorption in devotion to Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in complete non-attachment to material association. So hearing is a key component. It's like a pillar, it's a foundation, and association. Yes, we want to come to the point, and this is kind of a delicate point here, we want to come to the point where we're not dependent on association. We can use Srila Prabhupada as an example, that he left Vrindavan where everyone's greeting you with Jai Radhe, Hare Krishna. He left Vrindavan, came to Pittsburgh. It wasn't like, Pittsburgh was not like Pittsburgh, New York City, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Europe. These were not chakras of bhakti enlightenment. So you say, oh, he left us. But Prabhupada, he was completely strong internally, meaning he was always associating with Krishna. So we want to come to that point where we're not dependent on association. Prabhupada's always associating with Rupa Goswami, with Jiva Goswami. Okay. At the same time, we want to know who we are. Like in the name of ideally, we want to, means like I want that regard, whether I have the association I'd like or not, I'm enthusiastic about Krishna consciousness. So we want to come to that point. But we don't want to use that, we don't want to misuse that principle. I saw a quote recently, nothing is so simple that it can't be misunderstood. So even this point, that we don't want to misuse that to say, yeah, so I don't need to come to programs because I'm in, no, because we can notice that if we're not associating, then we become dry, we become forgetful, and we become, well, we won't notice that we became forgetful, That's the nature of Maya, the Avaranatmika Shakti. We get covered and we don't know we're covered. Yes. I remember it was before a Safato foundational seminar, and we're having a staff meeting, and at the beginning of a staff training, we go around, hey, speak briefly why you're here, what inspired you to be here. And someone was on staff, and he hadn't been connected with Safato for a few years, and he was coming back to staff a foundational. And he said, I'm here to remember why I'm here. So I like that. And it can be the same, just like if I stop reading Bhagavatam every day, if I stop reading Prabhupada's books every day, like, no, I'm doing fine. No, I'm busy. I got a full schedule, busy. And then, okay, then maybe after whatever, let me just make sure, I'm just clear in 20 minutes, I'm gonna read Bhagavatam. And it's like, and then like in the first minute, then I remember, oh yeah, that's why I ought to discipline myself to read every day, because there's an awakening of knowledge in the nature of Maya as we forget. We've fallen down the slippery slope and we think we're in the top of the mountain, right? So, Vijayate Vidagrantis Chijante Sarvasamsha Shiante Chasitar Kamini Drishta Evat Manish Buri. Okay, so through this process, then the knot in the heart is pierced and all misgivings are slashed to pieces. And then the whole chain of entanglement and karma is brought to closure, to the extent that we're alive in realizing who we are as spirit soul. So also this verse about doubts. So this verse in Bhagavatam, Vijayate Riyada increased Chijante Sarvasamshaya, same Sarvasamshaya, same word as here in Bhagavad Gita chapter 7 text 1, Samshayam Samagramam, and in Bhagavatam Chijante Sarvasamshaya, / doubts. Okay, so doubts are very healthy. Doubts are a sign of intelligence. this whole process of bhakti yoga discourages blind following. And it also discourages closed-minded cynicism. Arjuna is an example there. Arjuna's on the chariot. And so he's Krishna. So he's saying like, well, no, Krishna, I don't want to fight. Throughout Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna hears and he goes, sometimes he says, well, it doesn't make sense to me. Well, here you said this and there you say that. So the whole Gita is driven by Arjuna's doubts. So Arjuna, he was not like, blindly following, not pretending, just nodding his head, like a zombie. Neither was Arjuna cynical, like, oh, this is stupid, I'm just leaving. No, open-minded. So it's a process that engages the intelligence. And open-minded means I'm aware of my doubts and I express them. And I'm an open-minded, trusting spirit of discovery. And then when my doubts are responded to, then I'm cleared. Then my enthusiasm to practice self-realization and Krishna consciousness is even fuller. Whereas if it's like, okay, Prabhupada or Prabhupada's representative or nature, or somehow our doubts get answered, responded to, the dots connect, and then I immediately go, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but what about that? Okay, is my goal really truth? Or is my goal to find flaws? See, it's one thing like, yeah, in the natural process, the science of self-realization, I've come upon some questions. I'm not understanding this. I'd like this to make sense more. That's different than my goal is to find flaws to avoid giving myself fully to this honest process of self-realization. So through association, just like this association principle in any field, like say if someone wants to be a medical doctor, so he or she, they're gonna hang out with other medical students and doctors and physicians, and they're gonna read the journals like that, right? They're gonna hang out with other doctors. Someone's like, I want to be really expert in business. They're gonna probably go to the Chamber of Commerce, and they're gonna see how the business leaders in the world do things. They're gonna associate with that sound, but with that literature. So we get to check out how much honestly, not just as a show or as lip service, how much do I honestly, this is what I want in my life. I want to realize who I am as spirit soul. I want to serve God with love and devotion. Okay, to the extent that I want it, then okay, let me associate with similar like-minded people who are sincere that this is the prime purpose in their life too. So this is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Saktamana Parta Yogam Yujanmana Shreya Samshayam Samagramam Yatagyasya Sitat. Now hear, O son of Prita Arjuna, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for listening. Thanks for your association and presence and your intelligent enthusiasm for absolute truth. I welcome any questions or comments. Damayanti.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This week, well, I've been expressing and sharing, so maybe it's not a surprise, but I've been feeling like a lower taste for chanting and Krishna consciousness, but still not so much like severe doubts or anything, but just like, okay, I want to associate more. So this week I came to like every program. There was one Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, today.
Yeah.
Thinking about tomorrow, I'm just thinking like, let me show up more and associate, because and I had like a little tiny thought, like this association is more comfortable for me than just like me reading alone with like Prabhupada's books. So I'm like, let me at least start here. This is a great place to start. So I've made that choice to do that. I think thinking that that will help me, association. And that's one thing I wanted to say, that it's working for me. I feel more alive in Krishna consciousness. And also, I wasn't experiencing doubts consciously anytime recently. I'm not experiencing doubts, but last night I dreamt that I had like severe doubts. It's just interesting that this verse came today. It's like a little, it's just like perfect. But in my dream, it was right before I woke up, I was crying over doubts. Like, is it even real? Or is it, is Krishna real? Like something like, I don't remember the details of the doubts, but I was crying about it. And then in the dream, it dawned on me, the philosophy. And I just like, it's like I had all my faith came back, and I stood up from I was like, happy. I was actually going to go tell Garuda. I didn't tell him the dream yet. I didn't speak to him yet much today, but I was like, I just like all my faith was restored, just like remembering the philosophy. So anyway, and through the dream and the experience of the week, I feel like I'm sure we've already spoken of this, but like in my mind, I think I'm having a deep realization that there are like pillars to lean on. There's like pillars in Krishna consciousness. Initiation, philosophy, the chanting. I don't know if maybe you already know the list of like how many pillars there are, but that's what's coming to mind. Like I'm wondering, if you're missing one of them, there may be a challenge if you miss one of those pillars. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your sharing, Damayanti. You're sharing. It's a perfect personal example for these points that you as you described, you were losing the taste. You weren't like in severe doubts to give up the practice, but you were losing the taste, and you noticed you were losing the taste, and something in you was like a week ago or something, like, I want to do something about this. And so you connected with that foundation. You connected with that pillar. You connected with that pillar of association. And of course, I like how you described that we're associating with Prabhupada, we're associating with Krishna, we're associating with Shukadeva Goswami when we read Prabhupada's books. Okay, that's one form of association. At the same time, this form, as we have these programs in our community, so you decide, kind of just whatever, I'm going to every program this week, and it was effective. As Krishna says, this process is directly experienced, and you experience you're uplifted because you were neglecting that pillar. You were losing taste, or you were losing taste, losing enthusiasm. So you made a decision, I'm going to connect in that way, and you're experiencing it's effective. Thanks also for sharing about a powerful, a dream that moved you in powerful ways. So yeah, so association and Hare Krishna Mahamantra, particularly in forms of japa, and the philosophy, Prabhupada's books, these are pillars. And so, it might be, even if you say holy name, it could be kirtan, it can be bhajan, it can be japa. At the same time, Prabhupada guides us. Like if we chant one Hare Krishna Mahamantra this lifetime, that's wonderful. Wonderful. At the same time, we're guided. If we want to, like, each day of our lives substantially make progress out of drowning in the material ocean or being burned in the blazing fire of material existence, progress towards liberation and pure devotional service, then Prabhupada recommends to commit to at least 16 rounds per day, to give ourselves that ground rule. And then, because there's chanting, and then there's, well, how attentive is our chanting? And that's an important nuance. And so, yeah, so each of us may have, maybe different particular special attractions. Like, I just love reading Krishna book, Or in the evening, I sit down with a harmonium. I don't, this isn't me, I'm just giving an example. I sit down with a harmonium and I sing Vaishnava bhajans. Or for me, it's just like, at least once a day, I'll prepare a preparation and offer it to Krishna. And that's like a special connection from, that's the thing. It's like, it's such a complete process that connects with everyone. There's that. And then there's some pillars. There's some pillars where we want to look that, well, negatively, to not become weak, and positively to become stronger and stronger, apart from what my personal attraction is. Yeah, how alive am I in that pillar of participating in our community devotional programs? How alive am I in the pillar of fulfilling my commitment to japa and attentive japa? How present am I there? How alive am I in hearing Prabhupada's lectures and reading Prabhupada's books? How present am I in that pillar of consuming only prasadam consciously? And like that. So, I appreciate your sharing, and it moves me, and I think others to awareness of where we stand in relation to the different foundations of this process of Krishna consciousness given to us by Srila Prabhupada.
Hi, Kristen. There's one more thing really quick. I want to say thank you for taking a stand that these programs happen. I think they've been happening 2 to 5 times per week for how many years? Do you remember?
Yes, since we started in December 2010, Malini and I online, making them available online, started in 2016.
Oh, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Garuda.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Dhira Govinda, for the class. So I was appreciating, acknowledging what we expose ourselves to as an association. Just thinking about like my personal process, seeing that like as I was making more commitments to like the structure of this practice, I had to become more and more mindful of what I was exposing myself to. Because I was seeing that it was interfering in those commitments that I was making with the structure around like the regulated principles and chanting my rounds. And even like staying conscious of Krishna in my life. I was seeing like the direct relationship with what I expose myself to, whether it's music or visual, any kind of video thing online, or people associated with people, or anything really. It caused me to like really pay more attention to like what I expose myself to. And I found that that's been extremely supportive to like stay like on track, like to really stay grounded in this process. And I was one part of this verse that was really stands out for me was where it says, one has therefore to learn from Krishna directly or from a pure devotee of Krishna. And I just want to kind of clarify, like when it's stating learn directly from Krishna, I'm thinking, I could, maybe there's something I'm overlooking, but I'm thinking like when we read these words that is given to us through the disciplic succession, we're hearing directly from Krishna. That's my understanding. And then when it states that, or from a pure devotee of Krishna, we hear from the acharyas and Srila Prabhupada and his purports and translations. Is that kind of the sense of what that or from a pure devotee of Krishna? Is that?
Thanks for your sharing about your process, your emerging awareness of the importance of what we expose ourselves to. And I appreciate your question. So Garuda Prabhu is referring to the third paragraph of the purport. And the third sentence of that paragraph, Prabhupada writes, "The Lord therefore says to Arjuna, Tat Shrinu, or hear from me. No one can be a greater authority than Krishna, and therefore by hearing from him one receives the greatest opportunity for progress in Krishna consciousness. One has therefore to learn from Krishna directly or from a pure devotee of Krishna, and not from a non-devotee upstart puffed up with academic education." Here's my understanding. And again, Prabhupada gave more than 40 lectures on just this one verse. And he has many conversations where he visits this verse. So my understanding, I'm not going to get a drop of what the fullness of Prabhupada's import. So we can see there in that paragraph, Prabhupada's referencing Arjuna. So he said, I see this on a few levels. So one, when Prabhupada says, one is therefore to learn from Krishna directly, you can like Arjuna, like Arjuna, Krishna is Arjuna's current link. Krishna is Arjuna's current link, direct spiritual master. So like Arjuna, or just as good, or to hear and learn from a pure devotee of Krishna. Connect with our current link, in our case, Srila Prabhupada. So he's saying and Prabhupada often says, sometimes, especially in, I've heard some lectures in India, and Prabhupada will emphasize, Arjuna has no advantage over you. Of course, Arjuna does, because he has a pure devotional heart. So Prabhupada's saying that if we hear in the parampara, then Krishna is directly present. Krishna is directly present. So that's one understanding, directly like Arjuna, or through Krishna's pure representative. And when we hear it, because see, even if we're reading this verse in purport, even if we're reading the verse, that's directly Krishna. Still, we're getting from Srila Prabhupada. We're hearing from our current link. And hearing from our current link, as an example Prabhupada uses, we can say, well, that's indirect. Well, in one way it's indirect, but ironically, it's direct. The example given is like, I say, I want my eyes to have a direct relationship with this book. No glasses in between. Direct. And it's like, 40 years ago, I would see things good. Now just like nothing, it's all blurry. So I can say in one sense, these glasses are in the way between my eyes and the book. Well, in a sense that's true, but actually these glasses enhance my direct relationship with the book and the print and the meaning. So similarly, when we hear Krishna through the lenses of his pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, and say, oh, Prabhupada's in the way. I want it to be me and Krishna. It's all blurry and muddled. But we hear through Srila Prabhupada, and then so then it's through Srila Prabhupada, and that enhances our direct relationship with Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Garuda Prabhu. Any other questions, comments, or sharing? Garuda.
I appreciate you elaborating on that part of the verse, the purport. So I was thinking about kind of, serving Srila Prabhupada, and I maybe you could say more about this, but my understanding is that we serve Krishna by serving the pure devotee, by serving Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.
And I can think about my own process in my life where, you know, I might like start talking to Krishna, pray to Krishna, and then I kind of get like kind of lost in that, and then I'm like, I'm going back to Srila Prabhupada and like asking him like, what is Srila Prabhupada? What do you want me to do, or how do you want me to handle this situation? Or so I'm kind of like seeing myself kind of going back and forth, where I'm just like, I know Srila Prabhupada's like Krishna consciousness. He's giving us guidance on how to like come back into our true being in existence, which is servant to Krishna, and yet we're serving Srila Prabhupada. So I don't know, could you say more about like what, like how does one like, you know, not get too lost in like thinking so much about Krishna that they're like not thinking about Srila Prabhupada anymore, or like, you know, like, or they're just focused on Srila Prabhupada. Is that okay that we don't necessarily like, you know, like it's, I feel like for me personally, like it's been easier to like want to serve Srila Prabhupada. He seems more tangible than Krishna sometimes feels like just so like, you know, I'm like a complete mess. Like, how can I serve Krishna? So, so I feel like, oh, you know, I can use my resources, my time to serve Srila Prabhupada's movement. So I was just kind of thinking about that too. Like, it's almost kind of easier for me to think about like how to serve Srila Prabhupada than to like serve Krishna. It becomes kind of convoluted sometimes for me personally. So I don't know, could you say a little bit more about like kind of that topic?
Hare Krishna. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Garuda. Yes. So, well, related to that, yeah. So the book, we have a more direct relationship with the book through the glasses, and then you know, it's like it's more palpable. That's the whole idea. Like Krishna, even Lord Chaitanya can seem somewhat abstract. Prabhupada, you know, very very palpable. He wrote these books. At the age of 70, he sailed on the Atlantic Ocean. He got up at 1 a.m. and spoke into a dictaphone. So we have his purports. And so that's the whole idea of the current link. Means like, yeah, here's how we approach that which is far away in our conditioned state. Here's how we approach. And the principle is simple. Like in a sense, let's just say there's a very important person in this world, a top political figure or entertainment figure or sports figure like that. Okay, so it's like, well, wow, I really want to please him or her or something. Okay, we probably first maybe go to a secretary. Well, I know someone who knows a close friend of that very important personality. Oh, what kind of food does he like? Let me yeah, I'll send him his favorite sweets. You know, we'll hear from someone who knows. Yes, and here's what kind of music he likes, and here, you know, we'll hear from someone who's very close to him. So Prabhupada knows Krishna. We're pleasing Prabhupada. We're pleasing Krishna. So we just need to focus on pleasing Srila Prabhupada. And then, as far as the direct relationship with Krishna, that awakens naturally. We don't need to force it. It awakens naturally, just like, you know, we're just from reading this verse, we're getting a deeper sense of this personality, Krishna, and we're getting it through Srila Prabhupada at the same time. So just like we chant Hare Krishna, we're developing our direct relationship with Krishna and Radharani, and so it is direct, and we're developing it through, because where did we get this idea to chant Hare Krishna? Through Srila Prabhupada. So yeah, so it's natural to some, like, our prayers direct towards Krishna, and at the same time, yeah, that if that's becoming a bit distant, like maybe I'm neglecting the foundation, my current link to the Parampara, Srila Prabhupada. So to always have in our heart and consciousness any direct relationship I'm developing with Sri Chaitanya, Srimati Radharani, the Goswamis, it's through my current link to the Parampara, Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Garuda. Casey. Oh, I'm not here.
Okay, now I can hear you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I first heard about all these things, I wasn't doing any of the things. And now I'm doing some of the things, some of the pillars. How do you know? So in my life, I have this like history of kind of pushing myself too hard to do what I think I should do, and then like going all the way back. And I've done that with this, and I don't want to continue to do that. So I think an important principle there is like meeting myself where I'm at. And at the same time, I still want to stretch and do a little bit more. And right now, I'm not really sure like what that next step is. I guess I'm wondering if you would have like a recommendation on which of the pillars is kind of like, or which of the things to do is like most accessible or most inspiring, or just, yeah.
Thank you, Casey. I appreciate you're sharing principle and you're sharing personal. So I appreciate the principle. Krishna says, Pratyakshavagamam dharmyam shushukam kartumyavyam. He says this process is joyfully performed. So if it's kind of like, yes, I'm being so spiritual, I'm doing this and this and this, I'm just like in this nasty temperament all the time because like I'm not having any fun, then we're probably overstretching ourselves, pulling the reins too tight. So a principle is we can check. Am I happy in this process? Because, and for me, happy means I'm on that growth edge. Because if I'm indulging in just mundane sense gratification, then I'm dull, and it's like that. And if I'm stretching myself too much, like not eating enough, or not enough sleep, or not enough recreation, then I'm also not happy. So it's like it's my responsibility to use my intelligence and sincerity to be in that growth edge. And what my growth edge looks like now might, have looked different 5 years ago, 20 years ago, 20 years from now. And so, that's a key principle. So that we're not indulging and we're stretching ourselves in a way that's inspiring. Because I could say, oh, I'm happy when I just sleep a lot. But I know, let's say if I just slept till 9 o'clock instead of engaged in chanting Bhagavad Gita, and then I'd be in dull content, I'd be in ignorance. So I'm very happy. It's an austerity. Got up early in the morning, starting at 5 a.m., transcendental sound vibration. Yeah, that's growth edge. All right, so as far as the personal, sure, I could speak to that, but I'll ask Casey if you want to just share a little bit where you at now, what's happening now.
Where am I at now? So when I think about the 4 things, that probably says no issue with gambling, never been interested in it. As far as meat eating, I ate a lot of meat. I tried to not eat meat last year, had this whole like drama about it. Now, I go many days without eating meat. Some days I eat fish and some days I eat eggs. So I told myself to give myself this year and then have more of like a hard boundary with that. But if I feel inspired before then, to do that. With intoxication, I feel like I've greatly lessened that, but I still do that sometimes once in a while. And yeah, with illicit sex, I feel okay with that too right now. With chanting, I don't chant a lot. I don't think I really ever chanted more than like 2 rounds in a row. I kind of feel like that might be the next step for me. And then association, I feel really excited to come and learn these things right now and to read the books. And yeah, I think that's kind of, those are all the things I can think of.
Yeah, you hit the main pillars. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so I I appreciate you sharing your process. I'm inspired by your process, personal, authentic, and growing in a genuine way. And yeah, I concur or resonate with your sort of self-assessment that I think that like a further commitment to chanting could be sort of like a natural rising tide that lifts all ships. Like maybe, well, what I would suggest actually, based on my experience and reading Prabhupada, having some connection with the process for 4 decades or more, it is like, yeah, with chanting, commit to some japa commitment daily and do it without fail for the rest of your life. Like a real commitment. Now, it could be a small commitment. Like even if, like what I'm suggesting, like it might be even more strengthening for you. I commit to at least half a round per day, 54 mantras every day for the rest of my life without fail. That could be better than I chanted 16 today, and then actually I chanted 20 one day. Well, then I went a month without chanting at all. But then I chanted 2 or 3, like commit to something as far as Hare Krishna Maha Mantra japa. And it's like lines in stone, like lines in stone. Like it doesn't matter what earthquakes or pandemics or relationship drama, I'm keeping that commitment. And then that commitment could be a foundation to increase after a year, and then you can increase it or like that. But that would kind of be my suggestion as maybe how to strengthen that pillar.
I like that idea. I like the idea of doing half of one. That sounds easy. I'm curious why what the lines in stone thing, what that does for us, like does for our heart, for our psychology.
Okay. It creates a container for us to free ourselves from material entanglement. It creates a container. It creates a container for discipline for us to grow. Even in a relationship, right? When there's commitment, that creates a container. Commitment means, because like, let's say if in a relationship, I had guarantee that for this whole lifetime, this relationship is going to be unending bliss. There wouldn't be no need for commitment. I don't need to commit to, but commitment is for when times are rough and I want to leave and it's really difficult and irritating and triggering and painful, but I'm committed, I'm staying. Then there's so much growth in there. Then there's so much growth. I know you've experienced some, like the Safato Foundational Seminar. We have some ground rules. We ask, if you want to take this seminar, commit. We ask that if you want, you need to give your word of honor, you're going to stay for the whole seminar. And we say, and that commitment is particularly for those times during the next 3 days when you're so uncomfortable, you want to leave. You want to leave. Some of you have experienced Safato Advanced Seminar. We got 22 ground rules. And if you want to take the seminar, you commit to rigorously follow all 22. And then you decide whether it's a seminar for you, if you want to make that commitment. Those commitments are not meant to be oppressive. Krishna uses the term regulative principles of freedom as a basic, simple example. Okay, so like, let's say if I want to drive from here to Miami, okay? So I can say, okay, well, I'm feeling free. So I might feel like driving on the left side. Or for me, a red light will mean go very fast. Why? Because I'm my own independent person. I'm free. We understand, Casey, that so-called freedom will constrain my freedom in a hospital, a morgue, a prison, or with $10,000 of debt. No, I'm committed to follow the regulative principles of the road. Drive on the right side. This is America. Red light means stop. All right, put my put my right turn blinker on before I make a right turn. I'm committed to those, and I feel so oppressed by those rules. No, I'm joyful to follow the rules of the road. I'm committed to them. They free me to attain my goal of Miami. So similarly, these are rules of the road. If we want to realize who we are as blissful spirit souls, eternal servants of God, here are some basic principles to follow. There's no force, and it's not all or nothing. It's not all or nothing. We meet ourselves where we're at, take a baby step. So these are rules of the road. To the extent we commit to them, we experience the aliveness of self-realization and God consciousness.
I don't think I have any more questions right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Ladini and Christina.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
It's just me who is going to speak. I appreciate the sharing and Cassie vulnerability to share where you are at. And I have an association question, or I have been thinking about association a lot, and it's coming here today. That I have a lot of experience of having a lot of association and a lot of experience of having practically no association. And especially this past 2 months, we had intense lockdown. So it's like being alone. And what I'm noticing are two things. And one thing seems almost like it's positive. I don't know if it's positive, but I my life is taking new old direction. I feel more inspired to be outside in the world and work with horses and do things. And I am a lot in association of people who are not interested in Krishna consciousness whatsoever. And I feel little carried away, but I also feel very alive. I feel alive in my doings, and it can be service which is not directly Krishna consciousness service, but still, I can. And so on one hand, I know okay, if I was to Florida now, I would probably lose interest in all these things, to make money and be famous and be out in the world. So I would probably lose the taste whatsoever, and it would be so much more focused on chanting and reading and that. But what I'm questioning is can it be that the association is sometimes can be holding us from finding the yukta vairagya, the balanced life? And so that's my question. And then yes, I also experience the taste up and down sort of. Christina is here now today after 3 months of complete isolation. I had completely different experience of chanting and singing today morning, because that was more of us. So yeah, I'm just I think what I'm thinking should I go to develop my life, and of course following the regulative principles, read, chant, all that. But or should I close myself in the temple somewhere when I have 24-hour association, which will help me to be focused on Krishna consciousness more, but then I will not maybe do my more dharmic things.
Thanks for your sharing. Again, philosophical principles and personal. Thank you, Ladini Shakti. Thank you. Yes. Well, I mean, my short answer to your question is yes. Not that association gets in the way of healthy yukta vairagya, healthy integration of Krishna consciousness in our dharmic service in the world, but we can misuse the principle of association to avoid the yukta vairagya principle. Yukta vairagya means to use everything in Krishna service. So right. So again, essentially association is an internal thing, right? So Prabhupada was associating with all the gopis and cowherd boys when he was on the Jaladuta, when he's in New York, when he's in Moscow. He's full of association. So it's an internal thing. So because I was a temple devotee, for some period of my life in Israel, in Florida. I was a temple devotee. Okay, and they say, oh, well, then I left association, like, so I could have stayed there. You know, I could have stayed a temple devotee for the past 30 years. And I know that it's like, I know that wasn't my service to do that. That wasn't what Prabhupada wanted from me. So it was my service to go to PhD school and associate there. And it was my service, yeah, to go into facilitating seminars with people who never heard of the Maha Mantra. So that's my service, and it would have been neglecting my service, my dharma and my service to not do those things. And then when we do those things, that's where kind of like that, you know, that we're intelligent and balanced, that we have association with japa, we're reading Prabhupada's books. So when we go out, we're giving Krishna consciousness association rather than getting dragged down. So there could be a devotee very much, okay, let's say Prabhupada, even apart from, you know, leaving Vrindavan, Prabhupada was a chemist, he was running a pharmacy, he was running a business, okay? All right, so I'm gonna say that Prabhupada was so much, he was fully alive in association, almost surely more than those living in the thousands and thousands of temples in India. There's thousands of Radha Krishna temples in India. So Prabhupada's so much more alive in association when he's transacting business as a chemist, right? So those are some thoughts.
Yes, thank you. That's helpful. Like the compass you shared, like what was my service question, and then also like knowing that maybe I don't want to do service 24 hours a day. So.
Right. Yeah. And that
Christina says hi to you also. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Christina. I'm glad you're here in our association. Glad to have your association. Thank you, Ladini Shakti. Garuda, you had a comment?
Yes, I did. I was thinking about the inquiry that Casey had regarding setting in stone chanting in the rural rounds. And what I thought about was, and I hope that this is aligned with what Srila Prabhupada would share, is that so this relationship with Krishna, we've forgotten it. We've lost our like alive, loving exchange with Krishna. And when we chant his names, we're associating with him directly. And Krishna, like he hears us chanting. It's like and he notices, and he's feeling like, oh, my child. I hear him calling for me, or she. I hear my child. I haven't had that connection, and it's like Krishna notices that. So it's he notices our commitment.
Yes.
And he's like, he notices our sincerity and us being serious, that we want to rekindle that connection with him. So I wanted to share that too, that like I mean, it's kind of a paradigm that, you know, one has to really be open to, and I've gone through my own process of like being open to like, okay, let me give myself to this process. But yeah, I just wanted to share that too. It's like Krishna sees that we're serious, and then he responds to that, our commitments and our seriousness, with wanting to have a relationship with him, wanting it to be alive again. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Garuda Prabhu. It's a beautiful point. It gets to the essence that because essentially we talk about rules of the road, getting to Miami. We talk about, so if our goal is self-realization, our goal essentially is developing that personal relationship with God, with a personality. It's a personal relationship. So just like in any relationship, our devotion to a relationship is shown by commitment. Commit, yes, like I'm committed to. So we're saying, yes, Krishna, I'll chant your names at least 2 minutes per day, at least 2 hours per day. So yes, yes, Krishna, I will sing kirtan, and I'll read your books at least in the morning. With that, so like the commitment, then we're becoming dear to God through personal commitment. Thanks for that. Thank you all for your association. Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Right.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai, Hare Krishna.